ನೀವು ವಿಜ್ಞಾನಿಗಳ ಹತ್ರ ಕೇಳಿ. ಅದು ವಿಜ್ಞಾನ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ಅದೊಂದು ಬೇರೆ, ಹೋಲಿ ಕಾವು, ಅದು ಉಳಿದವರಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅದು ಯಾಕೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ವಿಜ್ಞಾನಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಬೇರೆ ಭಾಷೆ ಉಂಟು. ಆ ಭಾಷೆ ಇಕ್ವೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಹಾಕಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗೋದು ಬಹಳ ಪ್ರಫೌಂಡ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥ ಒಂದು ಭಾಷೆ ಉಂಟು. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಯಾವ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ನಮಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ವೋ ಬಹಳ ಪ್ರಫೌಂಡಾಗಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ಕೂಡ ನಡೆದು ಹೋಗ್ತದೆ. ಇತಿಹಾಸಕ್ಕೊಂದು ದುರ್ಗತಿ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ಅದು ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುವ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಬೇಕಾಗ್ತದೆ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಇತಿಹಾಸಕಾರರು ಬಿಟ್ಟು. ಇತಿಹಾಸಕಾರರು ಇತಿಹಾಸವನ್ನು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಧೈರ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅವಾಗ. ಇದೊಂದು ವಿಪರ್ಯಾಸ ನೋಡಿ. ಇತಿಹಾಸದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೀವು ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಓದಿಕೊಂಡಷ್ಟು ಇತಿಹಾಸದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೀವು ತೀರ್ಪುಗಳನ್ನು ಕೊಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗೋದೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು MA ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ನಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಾಗ ನಂಗೆ ಹಂಗೆ ಕಾಣ್ತಿತ್ತು, ನಾನು ಇತಿಹಾಸದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತೀರ್ಪು ಕೊಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ. ಮತ್ತು ವರ್ಷ ಪಾಠ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಓದಿಕೊಂಡು ಪಾಠ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಅದೊಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕೆಟ್ಟ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು. ಓದಿಕೊಂಡು ಪಾಠ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದದ್ದು, ಓದೋದೇ ಪಾಠ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಸೊ ಇತಿಹಾಸದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಏನೂ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ನಮಗೇನು ಕಲಿತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥ ಫೀಲಿಂಗ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ದೊಡ್ಡ ದುರಂತ ಇತಿಹಾಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಯಾವ ಜ್ಞಾನದಲ್ಲೂ ಹೇಗೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸತ್ಯ ಅಂತ ಒಂದಿದೆ. ಇತಿಹಾಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸತ್ಯ ಇದೆ. ಆ ಸತ್ಯ ನನಗೆ ತಿಳಿದಿದೆ. ಸತ್ಯ ದರ್ಶನ ವಿಷಯ ನಮ್ಮ ಡೆನಿಸ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದು. ಸತ್ಯ ದರ್ಶನ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮಾತದು. ಈಗ ಸತ್ಯ ದರ್ಶನ ಆಗಿದ್ದು ಹೌದು ಅಂತಾದರೆ ಈಗ ರಾಂಕೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ಸರಿಯೋ ತಪ್ಪೋ ಅಂತ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಜರ್ಮನ್ ಇತಿಹಾಸಕಾರ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮನುಷ್ಯ, ಒಬ್ಬ ಇತಿಹಾಸಕಾರನ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕರ್ತವ್ಯ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ಟೆಲ್ ವಾಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ರಿಯಲಿ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಪಾಸ್ಟ್. ಭಾಳ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸಣ್ಣ ಮಾತು ಅಂದರೆ ಹೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಭಾಳ ವಾಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ರಿಯಲಿ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಪಾಸ್ಟ್. ಅದು ಸತ್ಯ ಅಲ್ವೋ? ಕಡೆಗೆ ವಾಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಪಾಸ್ಟ್ ಹೇಳಬೇಕಾದ ಅಂತಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ರಾಂಕೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಷ್ಟು ಸರಿ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ಭಾಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮಾತಾಯ್ತು, ನಮಗೆ ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಅದನ್ನು ಪಾಲಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ರಾಂಕೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ತಪ್ಪ ಅಂತ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಬರ್ತದೆ. ತಪ್ಪಲ್ಲ. ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇಷ್ಟೇ, ನಿಮಗೆ ಹಿಂದೆ ಏನು ನಡೆದಿತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಮಾಹಿತಿ ಇದೆ, ಆ ಮಾಹಿತಿ ಪ್ರಕಾರವೇ ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕಷ್ಟೆ. ಆ ಮಾಹಿತಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಆದರೆ, ಗತಕಾಲ ಯಾವ ಕುರುಹನ್ನು ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೋಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಾದರೆ ಆ ಗತಕಾಲ ನಿಮಗೆ ಗತಕಾಲವೇ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಇಲ್ಲ ನಿಮಗೆ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪಾಲಿಗೆ ಅದಿಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಸರ್ತಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಕಾಣ್ತದೆ, ಇದು ಹೀಗೆ ಹೇಳುವಂಥ ಸರಿಯೋ ಅಂತ. ಅದು ಸರಿಯೇ, ನೀವು ನೋಡಿ. ಸಾವಿರದ 1920, 21, 22ನೇ ಕಾಲಕ್ಕೆ ಅದನ್ನು ಮೊದಲು ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಕಲಿತವ್ರು ಇದ್ದರು ಪುಣ್ಯಾತ್ಮರವರು. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೊಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಚಾಪ್ಟರೇ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಕಲೀಲಿಕ್ಕೆ. ಈಗ ಸಿಂಧೂ ನದಿ ನಾಗರಿಕತೆ ಅದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೇವಲ್ಲ ನಾವು, ಇಷ್ಟು ಶುದ್ಧ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೇವೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ವರ್ಷ ಅದು ಇದು ಅಂತ ಅದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸಹ ಓದಿಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ ಇದ್ದಾನಲ್ಲ, ಅದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಭಾಳ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ತೀರ್ಮಾನ ಕೊಡ್ತೇನೆ. ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಒಬ್ಬ ನಮ್ಮ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ ಇದ್ದಾನಲ್ಲಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ, ನಮ್ಮೂರಲ್ಲಿ. ಅವ ಒಂದು ದಿವಸ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿರುವಾಗ ಅವ್ಯತಿ 15 ಲಕ್ಷ ವರ್ಷ 15 ಲಕ್ಷ ವರ್ಷ ಕೆಟ್ಟ ಸಿಟ್ಟು ಬಂತು ನನಗೆ. 15 ಲಕ್ಷ ವರ್ಷ ಅಂದರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತುಂಟ ನಿಮಗೆ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದೆ. 15 ಲಕ್ಷ ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಎಂಥದ್ದಿದ್ದೆವು, ನಮ್ಮ ಆ್ಯನ್ಸೆಸ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಎಂಥದ್ದಿದ್ದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ, ರಿಚರ್ಡ್ ಡಾಕಿನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನೊಂದು ಒಬ್ಬ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಬರೆದಾನೆ. ರಿಚರ್ಡ್ ಡಾಕಿನ್ಸ್ ಭಾಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸೈಂಟಿಸ್ಟ್, ಅವ ಹಿಸ್ಟೋರಿಯನ್ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಅವ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ, ನಾನು, ನನ್ನ ತಂದೆ, ನನ್ನ ಅಜ್ಜ, ನನ್ನ ಮುತ್ತಜ್ಜ, ಹೀಗೆ ನೀವು ಹಿಂದೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಪೀಳಿಗೆಯನ್ನು ಹಿಂದೆ ಹೋಗಿ 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 1 ಮಿಲಿಯನ್ ಹಿಂದೆ ಹೋಗ್ಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗ್ತದಲ್ಲ, ಮ್ಯಾಥಮೆಟಿಕಲಿ ಹೋಗ್ಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗುತ್ತಲ್ಲ. ಆಗ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಆ್ಯನ್ಸೆಸ್ಟರ್ ಯಾರು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದರೆ, ಅದು ಯಾರು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದರೆ, ನಾವು ಮರದ ಮೇಲೆ ನೋಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾವು ನೆನೆಸೋದು ಮರದ ಮೇಲೆ ನೋಡಬೇಕಂತ. ಅದು ಹಾಗಿದ್ದರೆ ಪುಣ್ಯ ನಮ್ಮದು. ಅದಲ್ಲ, ಅವರ್ ಆ್ಯನ್ಸೆಸ್ಟರ್ ಮಿಲಿಯನ್ತ್ ಇದು ವಾಸ್ ಎ ಫಿಶ್ ಅಂತೆ. ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ಓದಿ ಆಶ್ಚರ್ಯ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ನಮಗೆ. ಅಂದರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡದ್ದು ಏನೂ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಒಂದು ಮಾತುಂಟು, ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನೇ ನೀವು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಅದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಅಂತ. ಅದು ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಎಲ್ಲ ನಮಗೆ ವೇದಾಂತದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೆ, ಉಪನಿಷತ್ತಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೆ ಅದು. ಆದರೆ ಅದು ಇದನ್ನೇ ನೋಡಿ, ನೀವು ವೇದಾಂತದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿ, ನೀವು ದೇವರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಡಿ. ದೇವರು ಇದ್ದಾರೋ ಇಲ್ಲೋ ಅಂತ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಅಗತ್ಯವೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಮ್ಮ ಬಗ್ಗೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮಾಜದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಮಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ? ಏನು ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ನೀವು ಎಷ್ಟು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡಷ್ಟು ನಿಮಗೇನು ತಿಳಿತದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ನಿಮಗೇನು ತಿಳಿದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ. ಅದಕ್ಕಾಗಿಯೇ ಈ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಬರೋದು. ಇತಿಹಾಸದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೀವು ಇತಿಹಾಸದ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಇದನ್ನು ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನವರು ಆಲೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡೋದೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಆದ ಕಾರಣ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಭಾರಿ ಸುಲಭ ಅಂತ. ನಮಗೆ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಇರ್ತದೆ, ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಓದಿರ್ತದೆ. ನಮಗೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಕಲಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬೇಕಾಗುವಂಥದ್ದೊಂದು ಸಿಲೆಬಸ್ ಒಂದಿರ್ತದೆ. ಅದು ಸಿಲೆಬಸ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಯಿತು, ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಯಿತು, ಅದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಉಪದ್ರ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಆಗುವಾಗ ಅಷ್ಟಾಗುವಾಗ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಬರೀತಾರೆ. ಅಷ್ಟಾಗುವಾಗ ಸಿಲೆಬಸ್ ಮೂಲೆಗೆ ಬಿತ್ತು, ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಪುಸ್ತಕವೇ ಸಿಲೆಬಸ್ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ, ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಪುಸ್ತಕವೂ ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಕಡೆಗೆ ಈಗ ಒಂದು ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿಯಲ್ಲಿಯೋ ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮ ಈಗ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಉಂಟು, ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಅಂತ. ಎ ಫ್ರಾಡ್ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಪ್ಲೇ ಆನ್ ದಿ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಆನ್ ದ ಎಜುಕೇಷನ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್. ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಅಂತ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ನೀವು ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಅದರಿಂದ ಕೇಳಿ, ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಕೇಳಬಾರ್ದು. ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಇತಿಹಾಸದ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಹೋಗಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಕಡೆಗೆ ಉಳಿಯುವುದು ನಿಮ್ಮ 4 ಹರಕು ಮುರುಕು ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸು. ಅದು ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ, ಪ್ರತಿ ವರ್ಷ ರಿಪೀಟ್ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. They say history repeats itself. No, history does not repeat itself. Historians ಅಲ್ಲ, history teachers repeat themselves. ಹೀಗೆ ಆಗೋದು. ನಾವು ಇತಿಹಾಸವನ್ನು ನಮಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತಿದ್ದರೆ ಮೊದಲು ಏನು ನೆನಪಬೇಕಂತ, ಇತಿಹಾಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಇತಿಹಾಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅದು ಉಂಟು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ನಂಬಿದರೆ ನಾವು ಐದರ್ ವಿ ಎಸ್ಕೇಪ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ, ಅದರ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲೆಕ್ಸಿಟಿಯನ್ನು ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಕಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇದು ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ. ಆದ ಕಾರಣವೇನು, ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ. ನೀವು ಏನು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ, ಯಾವ ರಾಜನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಅವರ ಉತ್ತರ ಒಂದೇ, ಹೆಸರು ಮಾತ್ರ ಬೇರೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಒಂದು ಸರ್ತಿ ಹುಟ್ಟುತ್ತಾನೆ, ಏನೋ ಮಾಡಿ ಇಂತಿಂಥ ರಾಜ್ಯವನ್ನು ಗೆಲ್ತಾನೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಥ ಯುದ್ಧಗಳನ್ನು ಗೆಲ್ತಾನೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಥ ಇದು ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ, ಸಾಲು ಮರಗಳನ್ನು ಕಟ್ಟಿ ಇದು ಬೆಳೆಸಲೇಬೇಕು, ಅವನು ಬಾವಿ ತೋಡಿಸ್ಲೇಬೇಕು, ಕೆರೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕಟ್ಟಿಸ್ಲೇಬೇಕು. ಅದು ಮಾಡದಿದ್ದರೆ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ರಾಜ ಆಗುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ರಾಜ ಯಾರು, ಕೆಟ್ಟ ರಾಜ ಯಾರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಿರ್ಧಾರ ಆಗಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ ನಮಗೆ. ಹೆಸರು ಮಾತ್ರ ಬದಲಾವಣೆ. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಉತ್ತರ ಆಯಿತು. ಒಂದು ಕಾಲಕ್ಕೆ ನನ್ನ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ಮೇಟ್ ಒಬ್ಬ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದ ಒಂದು ಮಾತನ್ನು, ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಹತ್ತಿರ ಬರುವಾಗ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಈ ನರ್ವಸ್ ಆಗಿರ್ತದೆ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಈ ಕ್ವಶನ್, ಈ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಬರ್ಬೋದಾ ಹಾಗೆ ಹೀಗೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿಕೊಂಡು ಯೂಶ್ವಲಿ ಶೇಖರ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಟು ಸೇ ದಿಸ್, ಎಕ್ಸಾಮಿನೇಷನ್ ಈಸ್ ಜಸ್ಟ್ 2 things ಐ ಸೇ, ಗೆಸ್ಸಿಂಗ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಗ್ಯಾಸಿಂಗ್ ಅಂತ. ಅದು ಈಗ ಯಾರೋ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು, ಇಲ್ಲ ಕೃಷ್ಣದೇವರಾಯನ ಮೇಲೆ ಈ ಸತಿ ಖಂಡಿತ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಬರ್ತದೆ, ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಕಳೆದ 2-3 Mr. Vice Chancellor, all the dignitaries, the rest of them all are from history. I was reminded of that. And my colleagues and friends. ನನ್ನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಉದಯ ತುಂಬ ಉದ್ದ ಹೇಳಿಬಿಟ್ರು. ಹಾಗೆ ಹೀಗೆ ಅಂತ. ಯೂಶ್ವಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತಂದರೆ ಅಧ್ಯಾಪಕರನ್ನು ಹೊಗಳುವಂಥದ್ದು ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕೆ 1 ದಿವಸ, ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ದಿವಸ ಉಂಟು. ನಾನು ಯೂಶ್ವಲಿ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು ಅದೊಂದು ಈ ಮಹಾಲಯ ಇದ್ದ ಹಾಗೆ ಅಂತ. ಆ ದಿವಸ ಒಂದು ಹೊಗಳು ಬಿಟ್ರೆ, ಮಹಾಲಯ ಅಂತ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಏನು ಅಂತ, ನಾನು ಬಾಯಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೇಳಬಾರ್ದು. ಆ ದಿವಸ ಅದೊಂದು ಹೊಗಳು ಬಿಟ್ಟರೆ ಆಯಿತು ಅಂತ ಒಂದಿದೆ. ಬಟ್ ಉದಯ ಇವತ್ತು ಕೂಡ ಏನು ಸುಮಾರಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ನಾನು ಅಂಥದ್ದೇನು ಮಾಡಲಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ಬರೇ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೇನೆಂದರೆ ಮೇಷ್ಟ್ರ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು. ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು 10 ವರ್ಷ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ 27 ವರ್ಷ ಮೇಷ್ಟ್ರ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು, ಇತಿಹಾಸದ ಮೇಷ್ಟ್ರ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು. ಬಟ್ ಐ ಶುಡ್ ಟೆಲ್ ಯು, ಐ ಎಂಜಾಯ್ಡ್ ಇಟ್. I enjoyed it to the hilt. I would not exchange this position to anything else in life. ಒಂದು ವೇಳೆ ಹಾಗಾಗುವುದಿಲ್ಲ, ದೇವರು ಪ್ರತ್ಯಕ್ಷ ಆಗೋದು ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಭಾಳ ಹಿಂದೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಷ್ಟೇ. ನನ್ನ ಹತ್ರ ಒಂದು ಭಕ್ತ ನಿನ್ನ ಭಕ್ತಿಗೆ ಮೆಚ್ಚಿದೆ, ಒಂದು ವೇಳೆ ಪ್ರತ್ಯಕ್ಷ ಆದರೂ ಕೂಡ ನನ್ನ ಎದುರು ಖಂಡಿತ ಪ್ರತ್ಯಕ್ಷ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತು. ಆದರೂ ಕೂಡ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ನಾವು, ನಿನಗೆ ಮುಂದಿನ ಜನ್ಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದರೆ ರಿಪೀಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಈ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಷನ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ನನಗೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದ ಸಂತೋಷ ನನಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಬೇರೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಕಲಿಸುವ ಸಂತೋಷ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಕಲಿಸುವ ಸಂತೋಷ ಬೇರೆ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಕಲಿಸುವ ಸಂತೋಷ ನಮಗಾಗ್ಬೋದು, ಆ ಕಲಿಯೋನಿಗೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ಯಾವ ಗ್ಯಾರಂಟಿ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಆದರೆ ಈ ಕಲಿಸುವ ಕೆಲಸದಲ್ಲಿ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಅಡ್ವಾಂಟೇಜ್ ಇದೆ ಒಂದು, ಏನಂದರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಕಲೀಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಉಳಿದವರು ಕಲಿತಾರ ಇಲ್ಲೋ ಅಂತ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಅಲ್ಲ, ನಮಗೆ ಕಲೀಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ನೋಡಿ, ಕಲಿಸಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಳ ಬೇರೆ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಅದನ್ನು ತೆಕ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಕಲೀಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಬಿಗ್ಗೆಸ್ಟ್ ಅಡ್ವಾಂಟೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿಸ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಷನ್. ಬಾಕಿದ್ದು ನಾನು ಕಂಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಐ ವಾಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಇನ್ ದಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಷನ್. ಬಟ್ then occasionally some students come to me and tell me that, sir, you have not done a bad job of being a teacher. ಈಗ ಉದಯ ಹೇಳಿದಂಗೆ ಖುಷಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅದು. ಈಗ even though I am retired for 8 years now, I still feel that I am not retired. When it comes to, giving a lecture or two, I can do it with vengeance. I can do it with vengeance. Just I was telling somebody that the other day I went to some place in Kerala. They invited me, and then I went there, and starting at 5:30 in the evening. I reached there at 5, traveling all the way. I reached there at 5. At 5:30 I began my lecture. I ended up at 9 o'clock. 3.5 hours. I enjoyed it. And I particularly enjoyed it because the people who were listening to me, they were not students, they were teachers, mind you. They were suffering there for 3.5 hours. So that's the way. Today I am asked to speak on Vivekananda. I got this opportunity at a very short notice. I am in a way a stepping. ಹಿಂದಿನ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಇತ್ತು, ಅದು ಈಗ ಸಹ ಉಂಟದು. ಬಸ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಡೌನ್ ಆದರೆ ಒಂದು ರಿಲೀಫ್ ಬಸ್ ಬರ್ತದೆ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ, ರಿಲೀಫ್ ಬಸ್ ಅಂತ. ಹಾಗೆ ಆಗುವಾಗ, ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಚಂದ್ರಶೇಖರ್ ಅವರದ್ದು ಒಂದು 2 ಲೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೇನೆ ನಾನು. ಇಸ್ ಎ ಬ್ರಿಲಿಯಂಟ್ ಲೆಕ್ಚರ್, ಯು ರಿಯಲಿ ಮಿಸ್ಡ್ ಹಿಮ್. ಅವರಿಗೆ ಸ್ಲಿಪ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ ಆಗಿ ಲಾಸ್ ಆದದ್ದು ನಿಮಗೆ ಬರ್ಬೋದು, ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಆಗ ಕಡೆಗೆ ಏನೋ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಲಿಪ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ ಆಗದವನು ಒಬ್ಬ ಇದ್ದಾನಲ್ಲ ಹಸೆಗೋಳಿಯಲ್ಲಿ, ಹಾಗೆ ನಾನು ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದು. ಸೊ ಬಟ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಅ ಪ್ರಿವಿಲೇಜ್ ಟು ಟಾಕ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ any proud Indian today is proud of the memory of Vivekananda. Any proud Indian. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ನಾನು ಭಾಷೆ ಎರಡೂ ಮಾಡ್ತೇನೆ, ನಾನು ಕನ್ನಡ ಮತ್ತು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ನಾನು ಕೇಳಿ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಸರ್ ಹೇಳಿ ಸರ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಆಗುವಾಗ. ಸೊ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. The reason is, at a time in Indian history when Indians had forgotten how to be proud of themselves, or the reasons to be proud about themselves, Vivekananda taught us this simple truth, this simple lesson. And at a time when India was under the British rule, when India suffered acutely from an inferiority complex, Vivekananda lifted the country, the morale of the country, and spoke in the West about a nation which was under the thrall, which is under the heels of a colonial rule, but a country which was very rich in tradition, in religion, and in national heritage. But one must remember one thing. When you raise a position, raise a person to the position of an icon, we have a problem there. You will not be able to evaluate that icon. Icon is never evaluated. Icon is only worshipped. This is a problem. So I don't want to look upon him as an icon. I wouldn't look upon him as somebody who is to be deified, but who is to be admired as a great Indian. And a great Indian who made India remember its greatness, so that it could become great again. ನಾನು ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದದಲ್ಲಿ 10 ವರ್ಷ ಪಾಠ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿಯ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ನಾನು. ಐ ಆಮ್ ಎ ವೆರಿ ಪ್ರೌಡ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದ ಕಾಲೇಜ್. ಆಸ್ ಎ ಟೀಚರ್, I was not a student there. I was a student of St. Philomena College. I am proud of that too. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಲೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದ ಕಾಲಕ್ಕೆ ಡೆಸಿನಿಯಲ್ ಒಂದು ಸೆಲೆಬ್ರೇಷನ್ ಆಯಿತು. 10 ವರ್ಷ ಆಗಿತ್ತು ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ. ಆಗ ಒಂದು ಡೆಸಿನಿಯಲ್ ಸೆಲೆಬ್ರೇಷನ್ ಒಂದು ಕಮಿಟಿ ಮಾಡಿದರು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲವರೆಲ್ಲ ಇದ್ದರು, ನಾವು ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಕೆಲವರೆಲ್ಲ ಹೋಗಬೇಕಲ್ಲ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಬ್ಬರು ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟಿನಲ್ಲಿದ್ದ ಒಬ್ಬರು ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಎತ್ತಿದ್ರು ಆ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ನಲ್ಲಿ. ಭಾಳ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿತ್ತು ಆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾಲೇಜಿಗೆ ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದ ಅಂತ ಹೆಸರು, ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದ ಕಾಲೇಜು ಅಂತ ಹೆಸರಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಿ ನೀವು, ಯಾರ ಹತ್ರ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದು ಅಂತ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದವು. ಇಷ್ಟು ವರ್ಷ 10 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದರನ್ನು ನೀವು ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಿ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ. ಐ ಸ್ಟಿಲ್ ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್ ದಟ್ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್. I still remember that occasion when the person spoke idiotically. ಕಾಲೇಜಿಗೆ ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಅಂತ ಹೆಸರು ಇಟ್ಟ ಕೂಡಲೇ ನೀವು ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದರನ್ನು ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಆಗುತ್ತಾ? ಅದು ಗಣಪತಿ ಉತ್ಸವ ದಿವಸ ನಿಮಗೆ ಗಣಪತಿಗಳನ್ನು ಆವೆ ಮಣ್ಣಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದನ ಹಾಗೆ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ವಿವೇಕಾನಂದ ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಕೆಲವು ಯುಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಹುಟ್ಟುವಂಥದ್ದು ಅಷ್ಟೇ. He doesn't appear again and again in life. You see, sometimes, your devotion to a person takes away your sense of, say, a proper understanding of a historical figure. I am not interested in singing paeans of Vivekananda. I would like to locate him in the context of the times. He was a very striking Indian, somebody who represented India at a time when India was under the colonial rule. And mind you, the person had a very short innings in life. When he died, he was not even 40. Some of us live very long. Some people are into their 90s and are confined to their wheelchairs, and they would like to contest the elections and become the chief ministers. Some of them change their political parties at the age of 91. Right? You see such spectacles. But somebody, when he is old, is not necessarily wise. Don't mistake a grey hair or a grey beard for wisdom. Don't. It can mislead you. A person with a grey hair and a grey beard can be a double distilled idiot. there are two different things. In Shakespeare, there is a particular phrase. I'm reminded of that. Thou hast become old before you became wise. King Lear ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ, fool, because the fool there is the wisest. This is the paradox. Now, when we talk about Vivekananda, we have to look at his short life, but they can be divided into a few phases. I'm not going to tell you about his life, which is well known. Till 1888, he was mostly in Calcutta, and he was experiencing a transition from being a very fierce rationalist to a position where he realized that there is a world beyond rationality. It's not an irrational world, but a world beyond rationality, a world of realization, as something which he was able to realize only at the hand of a person whom he earlier dismissed as an illiterate fool. Ramakrishna Paramahamsanani illiterate fool anta helidava. There he came to realize that there's something more than rationality. And then this is something which was not peculiar to Narendra at that time. He was yet to become Vivekananda. It is a predicament of the English educated elite of Calcutta. English educated elite of Calcutta always had this kind of a struggle. On the one hand, they wanted to imitate the West. They wanted to imitate the Westerners. They wanted to get the approval of the Westerners, the Englishmen there. Because when you are educated in English, when you take to Western education, you will become Englishmen in all but the color of the skin. Idu Macaulay helidda. In all but the color of the skin. Color of the skin ಏನು ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಫೇರ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಲವ್ಲಿ ಹಚ್ಚಿದ್ರೆ ಪೇನ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನೀವು ಎಷ್ಟು ಆಯಿಂಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಹಚ್ಚಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಅದು ಹಾಗೆ ಇರ್ತದೆ. So, what people felt was at least we could become brown Englishmen. But it did not happen. It did not happen because the more educated you are in English, an Indian felt that he was discriminated against by the Englishman. Racialism was felt more by the educated Indians than by uneducated Indians. Because uneducated Indians, common Indians, ಪಾಪದ ಜನಗಳಿದ್ದಾರಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು they knew how to be, how and regularly how to be discriminated against. ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಬಡವರನ್ನು ಜನರು ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಹಲ್ಕ ಅಂತ ನೋಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹೊಸ್ತೆ ಅಂತದಿಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲಿ. ನಮ್ಮ ಜಾತಿ ಪದ್ಧತಿ ಹೇಗಿತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ರಾಹ್ಮಣರು ಉಳಿದವರನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಕೀಳು ಅಂತ ನೋಡಿ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಆದ ಕಾರಣ ಉಳಿದವರಿಗೆ ಅದು ಅಭ್ಯಾಸ ಉಂಟು. ಕಷ್ಟ ಆದದ್ದು ಯಾವಾಗ ಅಂದರೆ ಬ್ರಿಟಿಷರು ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ಸ್, ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಎಜುಕೇಟೆಡ್ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ಸ್, ಬಾಬೂಸ್ ಅವರನ್ನು ನೀವು ಏನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ನೀವು ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿತ್ತು. ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಎ ಪ್ಯಾರಾಡಾಕ್ಸ್. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ನರೇಂದ್ರ, who had a pedigree of English education, his ancestors actually worked with the Mughal viceroys there, the Mughal governors there, the fine scholars in Persian. Later they took to English education, And mind you, because of this background perhaps, or because of some reason, Narendra turned out to be perhaps one of the most brilliant young men ever. Man of coruscating brilliance. By the time he was 20, no, he was a fine scholar in English, fine scholar in Bengali, and his knowledge of Sanskrit, knowledge of Persian, knowledge of even French and other European languages was unparalleled. In fact, many of these people, the Englishmen there, they were astonished at the brilliance of this man. That apart, his problem was that he believed that rationality was everything. And that transformation, I think, is a very significant thing. Now, I don't want to say anything about what happened because, you have full details of this transition. You must read some of the more famous works available on Ramakrishna and, Vivekananda, particularly the day-to-day transactions of the group, which was very close to Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. In fact, literature on Vivekananda is available. Plenty. All that you have to do is, go to the library or go to Ramakrishna Mission and take, the full, complete works of Vivekananda. They are available. But the most important phase of Vivekananda's life, after his transformation, was between 88 and 93, he was mostly moving in India, trying to find out what India was, what Indians are, trying to experience India. Learning about India, studying about India is one thing, experiencing India is another. And Vivekananda did that. And he did so not just by traveling to the most recondite areas in the country, but he was also, in contact with some of the, highbrows of the country, Maharajas of the country, and everybody who came into contact with him were hugely impressed with this man. This is one thing. But we are interested in the other side of it. That is, after 93, when he went to America for the first time to address the Parliament of Religions, which is well known at Chicago, which he, of course, addressed twice in September 93. And till his return to India, he made 2 visits to America. Of course, in one visit, he went to England, he lectured there, and then, set up an organization there, that is Vedantic organization, and then came into contact with some of the finest scholars on, on Sanskrit, particularly people like Deussen and Max Muller and others. And then he went to Paris and, impressed people. You have the well-known biography of the saint by the French scholar. It's all very well known. But 93 to 1900. So 1893 to 1900, but in about 7 years, for 5 years he was outside the country. 5 years he was outside the country. He wanted to go back to America after 1900 when he came to India, but he could not. He fell ill and he died in 1902. So 5 years out of his last 7 plus 1, 9 years, he was in countries other than India. That is, he was in America, he was in England, he was in Europe. On his way, he went to Colombo and came to his country. Now, What exactly was his position? Now, it's all well known that he spoke strongly, eloquently about Indian religion, Hinduism, and tried to show that Hinduism was different from other religions in that it was the most tolerant religion of all. This particular statement, how did he arrive at this conclusion? Or how did he arrive at this position? Now, when he was speaking to the audience at Chicago, he was addressing the various votaries of religions, the various Christian sects or the Jewish groups or whatever. And in America, when he went to different places, Los Angeles, in San Francisco, Detroit, and you have a whole lot of places where he was, welcomed, he was lionized, everyone was impressed with his eloquence, people envied his English and his scholarship. A professor of Harvard went to the extent of saying that here is a monk of India whose scholarship is greater than all the professors here put together. That was it, the kind of plaudits that he got. His voice, his presentation, the kind of magnetism was such that in some places, the ladies used to just throng to his presence. And in fact, two of them at least known to have, proposed a marriage with him. That was the kind of a charisma that, that people in Kavi can be very, very attractive is well known. That is not the point that I am making here. But he was attractive because here was a scholar. Because for the first time, America was seeing a monk from India. They had heard of people. They had heard of monks, robed saints moving around in India or moving in the valleys of Himalayas. They have heard about it. But they had not seen a monk. They had not heard a monk. When they did, it was a remarkable experience. So much so that some women did not even think that it was inappropriate to, just send out a proposal. How about staying here and staying here with us? That kind of a thing. The personal magnetism of the man was absolutely, irresistible. But the position that he was taking about India, on the one hand, he was championing the cause of Hinduism. And Hinduism of what kind? Now, Hinduism today, we have a notion that this is Hinduism. Although, if you pause a little and look at it closely, you realize that the word Hinduism, unless it is constructed and imagined like a nation, it can be very elusive. Basically, Hinduism is a kind of a federation of beliefs and practices. It's a federation. Who should enter the federation and who should come out of the federation is a different matter. But in the 19th century, the idea of Hinduism as something which is out there already had been created. Because this is a modern creation.
Today, we can say that we can hark back to the days of the Vedas and say it is as old as the hills, as old as the Vedas. But Vedic religion has transformed itself in so many ways that many of the gods there are no more present. Either they have vanished out of sight or, they have retired like me. But you must remember that in spite of all the changes that take place, as I always say this, gods, like men, die. Gods are mortal. Many of the gods of the Greeks, many of the gods of the Romans, many of the Egyptian gods, many of our own gods are no more in circulation. They are no more in circulation. New gods appear. New gods appear. But when new gods appear, you immediately say these gods are timeless. Invented gods always become timeless. This is the way gods are created by men. I am not interested in finding out whether there is a God out there looking at me, making an audit of what we do. I am only interested in my idea of God, our ideas of God. It is not just my or your idea of God, but the ideas of God which are prevalent in various countries at different times, in different climes. Unless you take cognizance of that, you will not make sense of this idea of God at all. You don't have to dismiss ideas, and you don't have to be an atheist. Your ideas, your imagined gods become real. That is why, as they say, don't look for gods elsewhere. Look for God in your own heart. That is the meaning. That meaning is that. Don't look at it, look for a God in a temple, not in a church or in another place. Look for it in your heart. Unless you have a poetic sense in you, you will not understand religion, you will not understand legends, you will not understand your gods. Now, here is a man, for the first time, was talking about Indian Hinduism. A religion there. He was introducing Hinduism for the first time. And he was talking about a universal religion there. And where does this universal religion of Hinduism come from? It comes from Vedantic philosophy. He invariably spoke of Vedas as the origin of Hinduism, but actually Vedas meant Upanishads. Upanishads and the Vedantic philosophy. And here too, you see a hierarchy of Vedantic ideas. Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita and Advaita. According to him, it is a kind of an evolution. Dvaita, according to him, is a Vedantic philosophy, certainly, but it is at a lower level of understanding. Dvaitis may not accept it. I am supposed to be a Dvaiti, although I don't know much of the philosophies, because usually the best of the Dvaitis, the most eloquent of the Dvaitis, or Advaitis or Vishishtadvaitis, can speak only when they do not know their philosophy. Usually you become most eloquent when you do not know a thing. That's the way it is. But here is the person, who argued that from Dvaita to Vishishtadvaita to Advaita, this is a higher position where your understanding of the universe, your understanding of the cosmos, your understanding of the world, your understanding of God, well, all converge at one point and it becomes one and the same. Atman, gets equated with Paramatman, and that is precisely where, Advaita, according to him, is a universal religion. But the problem is, on the one hand, he talks about that. But scholars have pointed out, and you see it in his writings, if all religions are basically the same, if spirituality can bring people together, religions together, well, this is a wonderful idea, but does it work that way? Does it work that way? You know, we have had occasions when people try to put together the good things about religions. Sufis have done that. The Bhakti saints have done that. And Akbar did it. Akbar he tinkered with the religious ideas. And he thought that he could bring various good things about all religions and then create a religion. And he created what is called Din Ilahi. Of course, Din Ilahi has a political dimension, forget about it. But he tried to do that. But he said, look, this is it, and the membership is optional. And he got the membership. You know how many? 7 altogether. He had just 7 members, because it was a private association. No person can put together best things of all religions and create a religion anew. It cannot happen. That's why philosophers have not launched a religion. Philosophers have not started a religion. It is only the mystics who have done that. It's only the mystics. Philosophers can talk about religion, can talk about the various philosophical issues there, but mystics alone can. Nobody says Jesus was a philosopher. Nobody says Muhammad was a philosopher. Buddha perhaps was a philosopher. So much so that there are people who swear that Buddhism in the original form was not a religion. Later it became a religion. And the price that this transformation had to pay was Buddha himself became a god. When Buddha earlier denied the existence of God, or he was agnostic about it, this is what happened. So, here is a person now who had to reckon with the historical presence of various religions. And in the writings of Vivekananda, you see a very critical evaluation of the performance of Islam and Christianity, for example, in India. Because Islam came to India not by one route, it came in different routes. Now we get an image, a very, very popularized image, vulgarized image, that it came only along with the conquerors. Yes, Arabs came here and conquered Sindh, and Ghazni came here, and Ghor came here, and then you have the various conquerors who came here and came with the sword in one hand and Quran in the other. And this is the image which is available. But the reality is that there were a large number of Sufis, silent people, apparently insane people, because a lot of such God-intoxicated people were considered insane by the ordinary people. But they were the ones, you know, who popularized this religion. Sufis. And then we had the various Bhakti saints coming. Now that's a different matter. Christianity came here, and today Christianity is judged, evaluated, criticized because of the way the missionaries performed. It's a missionary presence there. Or the people who introduced Christianity were the missionaries. And missionaries could not introduce Christianity except by deriding Hinduism or deriding the religions which they wanted to replace. So you have a situation, historical situation, which Vivekananda reckoned with, and he was very critical about it. He was very critical about it. So much so that this part of Vivekananda's ideas, perhaps being critical of Islam, no, he is highly adulatory about the mystical qualities of Muhammad. He believes that, Christ was the greatest, Jesus was the greatest human being. He was critical of only Christianity as an institution, the church as an institution, the kind of evils which it stood for, the kind of cruelties that it stood for, burning the heretics at stake, the crusades, the religious fanaticism which went into this. He doesn't say that Jesus was responsible for that. Jesus was not. Jesus' teachings were of the highest order. But it's the institution which, brought in, created the religion of Christianity. So much so that the German philosopher Nietzsche made a statement which still, is a very, very ringing statement. He made a statement that the last Christian died on the cross. The last Christian died on the cross. A very, very sharp, acerbic statement. But how true? This is true of all religions. Because, Buddha preached and the Buddhists changed so much that Buddha wouldn't recognize his own religion now. I am very sure, it would happen the same thing to Muhammad. Because Muhammad's religion was born in the deserts of Arabia, and the way it transformed itself later, and the way it is transforming itself today, I am very sure that the mystic in Muhammad would not recognize or approve of what is happening today. This is the way. But in India, this is a very interesting thing about Vivekananda. While he was giving a particular image of universal religion, tolerant religion, highly eclectic kind of a religion that India had, something which the West had to learn from the spirituality of the Indians, he was extremely critical of the religions as it was practiced in the country. Very, very critical. He argued that our caste system, he apparently approved of the caste system, but he was critical of the way caste system operated in this country. He was highly critical of the Brahmins. He was not a Brahmin, he was a Kayastha by caste. He was highly critical of the Brahmins. And he rejected untouchability and believed that India's misfortune was largely because of the operative caste system and the way untouchability was practiced in the country. And he looked at the Varnashrama at 4 levels, and he hoped that at a successive stages, successive castes had come to fore. Brahmins at one point had a ritual superiority. Later, the Kshatriyas came to the fore because they had power. And then the money power of the Vaishyas came to the fore, and it was very, very strong, and it had, its strong presence not only in India, but all over the world. And he believed, and he hoped, and he also hoped that India should work for it, that the next phase should be the superiority and the domination of the Shudras. So here you see the most important feature of his argument, and also the relevance of his argument. The majority of the people, the oppressed people, who people believed were born only to serve, should be empowered, should come back to power. Because the idea of democracy, he was not talking openly in the language of democracy, because he was talking in end of the 19th century, and he believed that it is this change which is going to, change the fortunes of the country. If we believe that if the country has to change, if the country has to prosper, it should reject some of our old beliefs and also the old convictions. He rejected the notion that the sattvika guna is the best for the country. Now our idea is sattva guna is the most superior. Sattva, rajas and tamo guna, the three. He thought that under the circumstances we want actually the rajoguna of the kshatriyas, of strength, of what he spoke of as the muscles of steel and nerves of, muscles of iron and nerves of steel. It is this which, becomes significant. But all these make sense in the context of India, which was under the colonial rule. What is important to realize is that he never spoke openly against the British rule. He never did. In fact, there are certain references, stray references, of his views expressed with certain individuals about the British rule, about his sympathy for the revolutionaries, about his view that the Chapekar brothers, who had killed Rand and were hanged for that reason, should have their statues erected in gold. Such statements are being quoted. But scholars say that the veracity of these statements is yet to be confirmed. But what is important is that he believed that India should develop the inner strength. Unless you develop your inner strength, unless you are strong, you can never gain respect from people whom you rule. In the context of the British rule, this is a very, very significant observation. Now we have not yet reached the stage when Gandhi came to power, came and took over the leadership of the freedom rule. Vivekananda died in 1902. Gandhi phase of the Indian freedom struggle, it had to await another, say, more than a decade now. He came to India only in 1915. So, what is significant is that at a particular context, he was speaking a language which apparently seemed to converge with the language of the revolutionaries. But he was not a revolutionary. His brother was a revolutionary. His brother was a revolutionary. But when somebody talked to him about it, he said, look, he was a monk. He was only a sannyasi, and he had no reason to dabble in politics or speak the language of politics. That is for others to do. So it is this context that becomes very significant. Now today, this particular message becomes important. A person who has become a sannyasi, the sannyasa notion is that you relinquish everything in life, give up everything in life, put on an ochre robe and move about. Putting on an ochre robe or a saffron robe, you can do it even in a drama. Such people are available today. The idea of sannyasa is not necessarily something you practice in life. That is, you don't have to become a sannyasi as Vivekananda did. It is one of attitude rather than one of a fact. You can have a large number of sannyasis now prowling around with saffron robes or but they don't have the attitude of sannyasa. The attitude of sannyasa is important. And Vivekananda was the one who spoke of that. And his ideas made sense in the political universe, which it touched, the society which it touched, and he could speak his language to those who were outside the country, who were actually introduced to India for the first time by this man. Today, what has happened is, we have reached a stage when anybody who goes abroad and, makes a few speeches there, and, is looked upon as the plenipotentiary of the country or the ambassador of the country. Today you have seen this happening. Any Swamiji of this country, yoga has become an exportable commodity or an exportable idea. Swamijis have become an exportable commodity. And no Swamiji considers himself worthwhile or important unless he goes abroad and sets up his branch there. The more the branch he sets up, the better it is. And our Swamiji, I have seen this happening. I have seen this happening and I got ashamed of this. When a Swamiji comes there to be felicitated, he is surrounded by his disciples. And invariably, the disciples should be foreign disciples. Not the black disciples from Africa, but the white and the yellow ones. This is the level at which we have gone. This is the way I think things, the ideas got dictated, by your own, with the time. But here was a man, Vivekananda was a man who went there alone. And he had to be supported by some rich people to pay for his travel. He did not have money to do that. But there, his lectures got him the necessary money, and he hoped that he would raise enough money so that he could, spend that for the welfare of the people in this country. Of course, that did not happen in a big way. But today, the same idea has again. And, you are not important unless you go outside the country. Today, Udaya spoke of, my contribution. That is, 2 of my students went on a Commonwealth Fellowship and then went there. Personally, I believe that that is not the great thing. I did not go elsewhere. The maximum route that I have been from Mangalore University campus to Asaigoli, where I lived. That is the only thing that I did. It is not necessary. Ultimately, what you acquire, that is more important. Not, the kind of an additional entry into your CV that I have visited so many countries. You might have done, most of the countries you might have visited as a tourist. But this notion has come. Unless the Westerners give you a stamp of approval, you are not sure about your own quality. You should be sure of your own quality. Why not? Why not? The sense of confidence that you gain is what you gain, not necessarily, getting it from others. Today in India, I have seen this happening. If somebody says, some Westerner says, some Western scholar says, or some American or Englishman says that Indian culture is a very great culture, that is taken as a certificate. It is taken as a certificate. Max Muller said this. Schopenhauer said this. You have all this. But if somebody is critical, if somebody said that this looks terrible or something, you are offended. Now, you have no reason to be offended by the criticism of a Westerner, unless you have the confidence to tell him, look here, you don't have to praise, I know enough. You want the praise, you want a good certificate from him, but you don't want a criticism. This is a clear sign of the terrible sense of insecurity that Indians suffer from. Yes, Vivekananda actually, he went there not to convince the world that India is a great country. He was convinced himself. But then it was necessary in the context of the time. It was necessary in the context of time because it was important to tell the world that a country which is enslaved is still important. Don't neglect a country just because it is enslaved. And he wanted to tell the Indians that you will get the real respect from others if only you respect yourself. If you don't respect yourself, nobody will care a damn for you. They will just say, okay, this is the way it is. So, Vivekananda becomes very significant even today. Today, we have a desperate search for approval from others. You know, what is our economic progress? How well does it compare with China? How well does it compare with another country? And we want a stamp of approval from agencies outside the country. I think we have to outgrow that stage. If you are good enough, set a standard for yourself. Don't look for, outside and then set a standard. Set a standard for yourself. Today, world is a vast world. People knew that the world was very vast earlier. Today, the vast world is accessible to us. Now, how well we access the world, how well we grab the world, this is something which we have to learn, we have to cultivate, we have to shed this weakness, and shedding the weakness is something which Vivekananda always talked about. Maybe he was still young when he spoke. When he was still young, he died young. And, it's a rare combination of sacrifice and strength that you see in Vivekananda. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you.